Let's get down to business. Okay. So yeah, today is going to be something really cool. So yeah, for those of you who are going to arrive from on, please tell me in the comments like your favorite Ghibli movie. I may know it because I have not watched all of them, obviously, but like it will be fun to discuss it. And welcome Jerome, welcome Vanessa. Don't forget to tell me in the comments your favorite Ghibli movie, as today we're going to talk about Hayao Miyazaki, one of the founders. Oh, hey, Mark. Don't worry, man. Bon appetit, by the way, since you're eating. Yeah. So today is going to be actually very, very chill because I feel like I feel like Hayao Miyazaki, there's so much to say about this guy. So I'm going to go through like a brief kind of presentation of the person, like what has his life been like, and then at the very end, like maybe in the last 15 minutes, I'm going to go over why he does not like the otaku / anime culture that has been rising in the recent years. Welcome, Sabrina. Don't forget to tell me in the comments your favorite Ghibli movie. If you want to ask me, my favorite is Spirited Away. I think that movie is definitely like the most, together with Totoro, the most unforgettable ones. Like marketing wise, like you know, it's just so big. I think Totoro is easier to merchandise than Spirited Away because you know there's a lot more mascots in it. I think Spirited Away's spirits, well, yokai or ghost, however you want to call them, are more like on the scary and like creepy side. So of course Totoro, like the characters in Totoro are more cute, so it's easier to merchandise. But the Spirited Away definitely has like a huge cultural impact on how Westerners saw Japan, on how Japanese culture was sold. Yeah, welcome Mathieu, by the way. Yeah, Princess Mononoke actually. Hold on a sec. So actually I really loved Princess Mononoke too. Like Mononoke and Spirited Away are like some of the more recent Hayao Miyazaki movies. When you think about them, like maybe it's like what, the 80s, 90s, like the 2000s, like those really recent years. But you know, Hayao Miyazaki has been in the game for at least maybe 50 years. I mean, in the 50s, okay, there was this guy, Osamu Tezuka, who made like this huge Astro Boy series, and who began to develop episodes of anime based on Western style, like Disney style animation. Hi Pascal, by the way, welcome, and don't forget to tell us your favorite Ghibli movie in the comments. So yeah, to continue with the history, basically Osamu Tezuka was the first like big success of the internationally, at least that was like the first big one, like Astro Boy. But the thing is, it was like a lot inspired by Disney, you know, by the Western style. While you know the Japanese industry had manga for a very long time, and that was when Hayao Miyazaki met with his first co-workers during the 60s at the Toei. Okay, Toei was basically the kind of Disney of Japan at that time, because it had the ambition to become as big as Disney was in the US, but in Japan. And that's where Hayao Miyazaki and Osamu Tezuka both came from, but Osamu Tezuka did not share the same vision as Toei, so he left to have like his own studio, Mushi Production, which will declare bankruptcy like a decade later. Hayao Miyazaki will meet much bigger success with Studio Ghibli, and his own style, like opposite to what Osamu Tezuka was doing, because Osamu Tezuka's animation relied on a few codes. For example, you only animate what has to be animated. You don't animate everything else. You cut the budget and you cut the price as much as possible, so you can be regular and produce regular content. And there's a lot of simple cinematic stuff. Welcome Noemi, by the way. Don't forget to tell us in the comments your favorite Ghibli movie. So yeah, well, unlike Osamu Tezuka's style, Hayao Miyazaki is going to work extremely hard. He's going to like have nightmares about his own work and give it everything he has ever since the 60s to release a different type of animation that he and his co-workers will call manga eiga, basically manga movies. So because they are movies, well, and also the Toei used to make a lot of movies at that time, so joining the Toei was really a big move, and he had a lot of budget, and that's when he began to develop his first few movies. Yeah, and the most famous of his earlier days is Horus, the Prince of Sun. I'm not sure about the translation, but that movie, if you want to study Hayao Miyazaki, it's really important that you watch that movie, because Horus is basically the kind of the start. Horus is like his first big movie, his first big success that shows how he sees the world around him. And welcome Jules, welcome Adi. So yeah, Grave of the Fireflies, Princess Mononoke, Castle in the Sky. I'm going to be honest, I did not see Castle in the Sky yet, but Grave of the Fireflies was awesome. For those of you who don't know, like just simple information, the way Grave of the Fireflies is written in Japanese has used special kanji that, instead of being the normal firefly kanji, basically hotaru in Japanese, they use a different type of kanji for the fire to describe this kind of, that is more used in actual fires, in natural catastrophes, which is kind of a wordplay with the title. But also fireflies are kind of disappearing from Japan right now, like they are in decline, and that also had like the kind of wordplay, the kind of metaphor within its meaning. Welcome Charles. So yeah, I think Grave of the Fireflies was like super tragic. One of the most sad movies that you can actually see about Second World War. The from the Japanese perspective, I mean, the other one being Barefoot Gen, which is absolutely not made by Hayao Miyazaki, but Barefoot Gen was a movie made based on the manga of a survivor of Hiroshima. Basically, the author of the manga Barefoot Gen was someone who survived the Hiroshima atomic bombings and then wrote a manga a few decades later, and that was adapted. And I had to actually watch it, and it is absolutely crazy how much gruesome detail you could include with animation in those earlier stages, because at that time animation was considered limited because we didn't have the high technology, we didn't have a lot of stuff. So when technology is limited, well, it's the people who draws the illustration who has to work the hardest, and that's where Hayao Miyazaki kind of distincted himself from the others by working just extra hard. Like, some of you may have heard like stuff like Hayao Miyazaki being very strict and having a very high standard and criticizing a lot of newer anime productions works. Well, that's normal because the guy is just so harsh on himself. Like, there are so many interviews where you can see him living in his daily basis, like eating instant noodles and just like working nonstop and then taking a nap when he's too tired and then restarting to work. And then after an entire day of hard work, he's just like, I don't like what I did. I'm going to start over. And then you feel so bad about him, like, admitting that his own work is not that good and wanting to restart. Like, it's something that most people as an artist and anime production director will never do, because that's work, that's time. But he actually takes his work so seriously, like his passion so seriously, and that's maybe one of the difference that he can notice between himself and how hard he is on his own work, and the low standard that he can observe in like the work of many newer generation anime production. No, okay, no. So, Horus. We've talked about Horus. I kind from Horus actually. There are some of the very important elements from Hayao Miyazaki's story of writing that are not shown in Horus, but some of them who are. But one of the most important point of interest in his stories is that his stories are usually always made to be a single movie. That is actually a big difference between his style and the style of the anime nowadays. The idea that he doesn't like sequel. He doesn't like to make his work into a franchise, like for example Naruto into Boruto, or the Gundam stuff. Actually Gundam is a bad example for me because every single Gundam series are like different and not most of the time not in the same universe. So that would be also his style. Like, he doesn't like to make sequel. There's like one or two movie in the entire Ghibli studio that has sequel, but most of his movies he does not want to go back to them and then try to like do like episode 2 to make the fan happy or anything. His disciple Hideaki Anno is who made Evangelion, by the way, is much closer to the fans and much more interested into knowing like how the fans react and everything than he is. He's like just a content creator, and in the earlier stages when he was there making movies, like in the 60s, in the 70s, the otaku phenomenon was very young, so it was not something he was used to when he was in his prime. Like, he was very young, very energetic. He loved cinema. He loved animation. And those otaku, like the bad sides of otaku culture, did not exist at that time. So that may explain why he has such a negative view on them, because he felt like, back in the days we had like great animation, we had great anime movies, we had great audience. We didn't need otaku to survive. We didn't need otaku to exist. We didn't need the fans. We just produce something great and just produce something great again and again, and then other people comes in and produce other great stuff. And you can see that he had this vision about an anime industry without the hardcore fans who are going to like insult, maybe send death threat letters to the authors if they don't like make the story that the fans like. Japanese fans can really be really hardcore sometimes, and I'm pretty sure Miyazaki himself has received like maybe thousands of death threat letters and other kind of really negative feedback in the form of letters. And you can see that the guy his personality is really tough, so he can't actually take it. unlike a lot of other authors who just crumbles under the pressure. When I think about Hajime Isayama, or other authors, Hajime Isayama is the author of Attack on Titan. For those who did not know, well, he definitely feels the pressure. Like, it doesn't get to him too much, but he does feel a big amount of pressure from the fans' expectations. And this entire relationship, this new dynamic of relationship where the content creator works for a company and the company seeks to please fans to make profit, is something that used to not be this way back in his days, back in the 60s, back in the 70s. It was like starting from the late 70s to the beginning of the 80s that we will get like this kind of otaku phenomenon, which in Japan will begin as very negative at first, which you can see, by the way, in some movies like Perfect Blue and others. But yeah, Hayao Miyazaki is definitely someone that is old school, that has his own style, and he is proud of himself. Welcome, Marianne. Don't forget to tell us your favorite Ghibli movie, since we're talking about Hayao Miyazaki today. Yeah, Perfect Blue was great. And, Perfect Blue's ending is actually... A lot of people are going into like super maybe theories about what the ending truly means, but I personally like to think of Perfect Blue as a good ending, as someone like the story of a woman who was in a big, in this idol fandom universe, and she ended up finding her true way, getting rid of the toxic relationship with her friend. And I would really like to think that Perfect Blue is has a happy ending overall. And at that moment, people who made animation gave as much thought to how to animate something to what to animate. So you have to consider that they are not going to make some super deep storyline like Lovecraft stuff. They are not making this kind of content because they have a time limit. They cannot make so much of depth into their own story. Some of them actually do, but I think Perfect Blue's ending is pretty straightforward. Thanks for your question, Jeremy. Would you say that Miyazaki was in depression? At some point of his life, I feel like every single Japanese worker in the anime industry at some point in their life was in depression. That's how I would say it. I mean, Osamu Tezuka was in depression. Hideaki Anno was in depression. I feel like working in the anime industry is so much pressure, so much work. I think it's not necessarily pressure, because Hayao Miyazaki is someone who takes pressure very well, because most of the time his own standard is higher than the standard of the population and the audience anyway. So I would say that it wasn't really pressure. I would believe that it's more the work overload. They work way too much. They have to keep working. When you work too much, you need to take a break. And sometimes especially when you have to create content, you need some long months of time when you don't create anything. You just rest yourself because it's impossible. It's this old expression that's called milking the dead cow. Basically, you cannot milk the cow over and over again without letting the cow rest. Okay, that's the same with creator's brain. You have to get rest. And I think in the Japanese industry, there's this image that you're a worker, you have to work. And for the creator, for someone who was work is like to do some manual labor is very easy, to just keep their arms going because they already have the knowledge. But for someone to who needs to create constantly is extremely difficult. Miyazaki does plan ahead of time, which means that he plans a lot of time for his content. Like he knows that that it's going to take him a lot of time to come up with solid contents. So he actually gives himself like really a lot of time, so he's not going to be in a rush. Unlike some other project, I'm not going to name anything else than Cyberpunk 2077, but yeah, that's the kind of project that had very poor planning, and Japan would never accept this kind of poor planning. So yeah, I agree with you, Drews. I really hope this mentality would change, but I don't think that the situation in the anime industry is going to change much more. The reason being that nowadays we have more comfortable condition. People are less used to hard work, and if they are less, life and being able to find a good balance of life comes with habit. Like back in the days, in the 60s and in the 70s, like people in Japan were like working like in coal mines. Like they were working their ass off. Like even at Nintendo, at any big company, they were working so hard for their salary, because also the man had to basically make the salary for the entire family. So that was also even more pressure on the guys. And at that time, you could, by the society, by just developing people, you could have like workers that were very used to hard work. But nowadays, in the anime industry, how many Japanese people wants to have like such stressful and hard working conditions for their life? They go to university because they don't want to end up in this kind of industry. And that's why nowadays you get a lot of Vietnamese workers, Korean workers, and other Southeast Asian country workers to come and replace those labor. Hold on a sec. And because of all those reasons, I don't believe anything is going to change in the dynamics, because those new generation people are going to be less used to hard work. So even if technology has grown to make animation easier to make, the fact is our standard today are so much higher. Like we don't tolerate as many mistakes as before. The animation has to look super great. When you think about UFO Table with Fate Stay Night Unlimited Blade Work with Demon Slayer, they make an insane job. And since the standard right now is just so high, even with higher technology, it's not going to become any day easier to produce animation. And for those people who are not even used to hard work, then the future generation people, I think it's going to be really hard for them to. They're more at risk of breaking down from the stress, from the work, from overworking, basically to respect deadlines, because Japanese companies really likes to be on time. To give you an example of how much they love to be on time, let's talk about the train. Okay, back in the days, that the people's watch were like kind of not perfect. Like people's watch would like get like a few seconds late every single day, but the clock at the train stations and the train arrival time was always on time with the international clock. So what people did was, when the train arrived, they reset their clock to match that time, So this way, for the next few days, their clock is their watch is going to be like the right time. This is just how crazy it is when it comes to company and schedule respect. So yeah. Oh, welcome Lina, by the way. Don't forget to tell us your favorite Ghibli movie. As a reminder, mine is Spirited Away because I love onsens. I think hot springs are so interesting, so Japanese because it's very unique to Japan. I think, and the way the story of Spirited Away goes is just so fascinating. Like when you go to see that for the first time, that movie is like magical. It's, you see so many new stuff, so many great ideas in it, that you just end up being fascinated. It's the same case for, let's say, Princess Mononoke, for Castle in the Sky. Even though I did not see it, I know how great the experience is from, you know, just understanding how it was made. I also really like The Wind Rises. For those who don't know, The Wind Rises is one of the last Hayao Miyazaki movies, because I think he doesn't make movies anymore. And The Wind Rises is kind of a biographic story, but not entirely realistic. Like there are some elements that are non-realistic, and it's basically the biography of a famous Japanese engineer who was the one who designed the Japanese Zero planes during the Second World War, and those planes were considered like the fastest fighters at that time, and they almost brought a Japanese victory during the Second World War. But of course they were then outmatched by the newly American invention. This is why, by the way, during Second World War, aviation and airplanes began to evolve so fast, and this is how, in less than 60 years from the start of the use of the airplane, we eventually arrived to be able to land on the moon with the rockets under Kennedy. You know, in 60 years, this is some crazy evolution. And well, I always love history and science, so I think for those who also likes historical stuff, I think it's a good movie. The Wind Rises actually shows also the society back then in Japan, and how, you know, decent people lived in Japan without really giving us much of the political scene. Welcome, Sebastien. Don't forget to tell us your favorite Ghibli movie in the comments, and what I think about Howl's. I think Howl's is really creative, but I don't know. I just don't feel like Howl has this Hayao Miyazaki personal touch. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like a great Ghibli movie, but I'm not sure how much he himself was involved with it. But yeah, let's talk about what are Hayao Miyazaki's kind of style when it comes to animation. So first, the story. The story has to be really worked on. When you look at Astro Boy, at Osamu Tezuka, his stories are really great, but really simplistic, really like Hollywood, Disney style. But Hayao Miyazaki likes to animate as much thing as possible and create very fun stories that has a lot of, you know, inside layers, that has a lot of depth within itself. But most of the time, his story features a heroine, because most of his main characters are girls, and actually, what Hayao Miyazaki likes is when a story is solved by a moral high ground gained or lost by the villain. What I mean by that is that Hayao Miyazaki, one of the stuff actually that Hayao Miyazaki likes to introduce is that the villains in his movies, like the antagonists, the bad guys, don't lose because they become less powerful than the main character, than the hero, the heroine in his case. they lose because like with this development of the story, their cause does not make sense anymore. Their cause is a lost one, and the story kind of prove their cause to be unnecessary anymore, or not really important. Like their cause is kind of outdated. Yeah, outdated. I would say that. Like when you think about Spirited Away, for example, at the end, Chihiro. Chihiro. Okay, I'm going to call her Sen because that's going to confuse less people. But at the end of Spirited Away, Sen does not defeat the the witch who is in charge of the onsen. At the end of Princess Mononoke, well, I don't remember her name actually of the Princess Mononoke, but basically she does not defeat someone or kill someone or beat a villain like Dragon Ball style. When you think about other movies, well, most of his movies basically is not based on final confrontation kind of thing, and this is maybe one of the stuff he really doesn't like in recent anime, is that when you think about Dragon Ball, like, or Black Clover, yeah, Sun. Okay, when you think about One Piece, when you think about most shonen manga nowadays, like how it ends is basically there's this bad guy, but like above him there's like three other bad guys who could just kill him with one punch, or like defeat him like with one movement because they are so much more powerful. But then over those three guys there's like one big boss that's even stronger and who could like wipe down the earth's surface with like one snap of his fingers. This is something he really doesn't like. This escalation of power that he thinks is like kind of dumb and stupid, and like it doesn't add anything to the story according to him, and there's really no need to give this escalation of power between characters to solve anything. This is why none of the actual problems or obstacles in his movies are solved by power or by escalation of violence. That is like, for example, one of the style that modern anime shows a lot. I think he maybe feel like it's very superficial, like it's kind of this way of solving things. I mean, competition is all right. Like, for example, in sports anime, competition is always fine. But when you think about animation wise, like especially shonen manga, I think he just doesn't like this much of stuff. He really don't. I wouldn't say that he hates otaku, but he does have this very negative image of otaku in his own mind. Like Hideaki Anno spent like decades trying to convince Hayao Miyazaki that otaku has good side, that the anime culture is actually cool because it has a lot of good sides, but Hayao Miyazaki really don't think any of those. But yeah, recently I think he has contemplated giving to Hideaki Anno like the keys to being like the boss of Ghibli studio. I don't know what's going to happen with it. I mean, Hideaki Anno is much younger, but not that young. Like he's still like older than me and everything. So yeah, we have to wait and see. I'm definitely going to make future lives about Hayao Miyazaki and Ghibli movies, because I think maybe some of the movies like Spirited Away deserves their own episode where I'm going to go through like every single detail, like cool animation techniques used in the movies, and just talk to you guys about some cultural reference inside those movies, since that's kind of my job now to do this, analyze anime and study anime at an academic level. This is basically what I do in the otaku community here. But yeah, I'm going to finish the live soon here. But I want to remind you guys that all of the Ghibli movies are on Netflix. So for those of you who has Netflix, just go watch them. I mean, Netflix guarantees a very good quality if your internet connection can be strong enough. So I think it's really a good opportunity to watch those movies. I strongly recommend to watch horrors. It's called actually, if you guys want to know how it's written, it's HORUS. Okay, horrors. That's so you get kind of the one of the first big hit of Hayao Miyazaki. If you really like this guy, I'm definitely going to talk more about Hayao Miyazaki in the future too, probably as a guest when I'm going to be talking about my next pioneer of anime person, which is going to be I don't know. I feel like a lot of movie makers deserves their spot, but for the next episode, I really want to talk about maybe someone who produced actual episode anime. I think episode anime really needs their own spotlight. So next episode is going to be on Gundams. So for those of you who really likes Gundam and wants to know how influential Gundam was in the 70s and the 80s and how important the Gundam franchise has contributed to building this otaku community. You know, otaku, at the origin, otaku comes from Gundam fans. That's the kind of relation Gundam has in the anime industry. And unlike other stuff like Naruto, Boruto, One Piece, like even like Pokemon, Gundam was made to be animation at first. At its origins, Gundam was supposed to be animation. It's not like manga adapted into anime. It was made to be anime. So this is why I think Gundam animation is more interesting to analyze, because sometimes when you look at some adaptations like Gambling School, Kakegurui in Japanese, you look at the manga and then you look at the anime. The anime doesn't bring so much, you know, like the anime is basically like the images from the manga, but with the mouth moving and the eyes moving and with some like limbs moving. It's really not like it gives you something much new to experience. So most of the people, I believe, just watch the Gambling School anime and then read the manga for like to catch up with the later chapters. So yeah, in Gundam, it's going to be a really cool episode, but it's not going to be before April. It's going to be like really during April, I believe, or maybe during May. I don't know. It's going to be really later, because right now in my next few lives, I have to start by talking more about where to visit in Japan, cool restaurants in Japan, and you know, activities to do in Japan, places to visit in Japan. Like I want to talk more about travel to Japan, because I personally I've been in Japan like for over a year of time, and I've been able to travel like almost everywhere in Japan. So I wanted to give to you guys like tips to where to visit, because as the summer is going to come soon, I believe that some of you might want to go visit Japan. So yeah, and also I will make some of the former like French language lives into English for the community. So for those who like this live, well, thank you for listening until the very end, and see you next time, next Friday. I'm not in Japan currently. I was in Japan when the COVID outbreak began. I came back last year September, around that time. So this is behind me is my apartment in Montreal right now. But yeah, I did live in Japan, so you know, it's like more of a memories, and I hope one day I'm going to be able to work in Japan for some government stuff. But let's see. For now, I'm here, and I'm really happy with those lives. But yeah, bye bye.